Hi, my name is Charles Sears. I wrote my research paper on the topic of oak restoration. My major of study in college right now is arboriculture and urban forestry. So trees themselves have been very important to me, and oaks specifically are incredibly important for our forest ecologically, but also culturally. Oaks tend to make up quite a few of what we would call legacy trees. Legacy trees are simply just important trees that people remember, trees that you know just are part of the the human environment. I frequently talk about the giant pin oak tree that was in the front yard of my house growing up, and many people have stories like that. They've remembered that one particular tree, and a lot of times it was an oak tree. So it was very captivating to learn about how oaks are restored. This is more talking about oak woodlands, so oaks in a more natural environment. But again, most people tend to kind of focus on oak trees when they think about trees. That's the image you get when you think of a tree. So the actual topic of restoring the oaks, one of the first things I found was very important was to understand what disturbance caused the need to have the oaks be restored. So a couple of the ones in the research papers I was reading through, the scientific papers I was reading through, there was commercial logging. So obviously oak wood is very strong. It's very valuable. It looks great. So commercial logging was one issue, or one disturbance that had caused a need to have oaks restored. Another was fire. Obviously, as you can imagine, many different there's fires that disturb the population of oaks, and how you go about restoring them after that. And another one was agriculture. So the oak forests or oak woodlands had been removed for the purpose of agriculture. These different disturbances have different methods for restoring them. They have different objectives, and they have different obstacles. So for example, the forests or woodlands that had been commercially logged, those were able to grow back naturally, but the definition of an oak woodland is an oak overstory, a sparse midstory, and a sparse understory. So oaks in particular have there's actually pictures I tried to include in my paper that kind of try and exemplify this or articulate that, but they have a very different structure from their natural woodland structure to what we would consider their landscape structure or like a savanna structure. So when they have competition, they're going to grow very straight and very tall. Obviously try and get to light as much as possible. Most of the oaks that we are familiar with have this huge, massive spreading canopy. They have these just massive limbs that just stick out. So you can very easily see a huge difference from the oaks, like I said, that you would see, we'd consider like these legacy trees. One famous one is called the angel oak. I mean, it has its own name. It's literally famous. It's just absolutely massive. The limbs go out so far. But in one of the pictures I included, there's just these tall, straight trees. They're just sticks standing straight up. So that was one of their goals, was to try and restore this to an actual oak woodland, rather than just like a forest. And that has a lot to do with how the trees actually grow, the structure, and how strong the trees are. So there's a lot that is surrounding that. So that was kind of their goal, was to bring back the oak savanna, or I'm sorry, not the oak savanna, but the oak woodland. So they had to do different things than, say, the Sierra Nevada mountains, where the trees were disturbed by fire. They just needed trees. They just wanted the trees to grow at all. So they had different objectives than the the Cumberland Plateau in Kentucky was where the commercial logging had been done. And then finally in the Mississippi alluvial valley, they were more concerned with creating habitat for wildlife. That one was disturbed by agriculture. And so they were, again, like just different objective. They wanted to create better habitat for wildlife. So part of their response to that was they were very okay and very happy to see different competitive woody plants growing there, rather than just the oaks themselves. That was one of the ways that they, one of the metrics they used how they actually measured their success was how many other plants besides the oaks were able to colonize when they planted the oaks. In the Sierra Nevadas, they had a problem with predation. So wild boar and a couple different species of mice would eat the acorns. There, you can always plant, their big thing was whether or not you plant acorns or you plant actual seedlings. Seedlings are a bit more expensive, take a bit more expenses to get them actually planted, but then also their nursery stock, once they, like, you grow them in a nursery and then you pluck them out of the ground, you stick them in the ground somewhere else, the root structure doesn't form in the same way, doesn't form quite as well adapted to the environment as if you just put the acorns directly into the ground. So that was one of the obstacles that they had to work around.